If I was to review this film in a very condensed way, you can do this in a second as well. I would say that it was an interesting concept and Christopher Nolan made a decent film out of it, but I feel it could have been executed better and it could have been made into a better structured story.
I agree. I think my review would be really poor sound mixing. Like, especially poor.
You just went and hit the mole
Guys,
in the hole straight away.
It was already a long film. We were pausing and going back countless times. We were straining. We were turning it up.
Yeah.
To be like, what was it they're saying? Because this is a film where you need to listen to the dialogue, otherwise you won't understand it. It was difficult.
So imagine seeing this in the cinema without being able to rewind. You would have missed a lot of stuff.
People would have come out and been like, I don't know what I just watched.
No wonder people were so confused. One, the sound mixing was awful. We will talk about that because I think there were good aspects to it. But the story itself, very confusing, and you really needed to pay as much attention as possible to get what was happening. But at the same time, it was kind of see-through.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, for Christopher Nolan, it was see-through. Hey, NarendraTheComic again!
NONSENSEI!
Yes, we have NONSENSEI! What's that?
NONSENSEI!
There we go. Right now we're talking about Tenet, having our review of that film. That came out over a year ago now, but we could never go to the cinema and see it. We saw lots of spoilery bits on it, but I guess the spoilers weren't really that spoilery because we really didn't have much of a concept of the film other than this cause and effect scenario that was going on. The film itself is my least favourite Christopher Nolan film ever.
Yeah.
That's a high bar because Christopher Nolan movies generally hit a certain way. Like The Dark Knight Rises is not a great movie, but Batman Begins, for me, I prefer it to The Dark Knight. Most people don't. Most people don't. Interstellar could have been better. The last 30 minutes just went all over the place. Kind of destroyed the way I liked the film because I really enjoyed it up to that part with the fourth, fifth dimension stuff. Went a bit too bonkers, but then that's what the guy does. Inception, obviously, is Inception. The Prestige, unbelievable movie.
Yeah.
And I think this one just comes in like The Dark Knight Rises level.
I think with a name like Christopher Nolan, you expect a lot. You expect to come out, you know, kind of with a mild headache because of the amount you've had to think.
But when you look at a film like Dunkirk, it wasn't like that.
No.
You watched that and just thought, wow, there's something so special about this film. And the way he used a lack of sound in that movie and a lack of audio.
The further along into the film we got, the more questions I had, which were immediately being answered by my own head.
Yeah.
Like, when the film started, we were like, this is a very odd place to start the film because it felt janky. And then we got about 40 minutes in and we went, oh. The rest of the film, we kind of planned it out in our own heads because it became see-through. All we had to ask was, well, why would they have started there?
Yeah.
And then as the concept kind of evolved and revealed itself, it was like, oh, well, then this is a through line.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then all it took is that small question and suddenly a lot of the glittery effects
Got unlocked.
Yeah, it kind of got ruined early.
But the thing is, most people don't do that. We're the weird ones. We sit there and analyze the film while it's going on, figuring out what's going to happen next. Most people don't do that. They just sit there and are taken away by the film. A film has to be unbelievably good for that to happen to me. I have to be completely engrossed to not be thinking about what could happen next and just acknowledging about what is happening now.
For The Prestige, that was that for me. I was shock and awe, guys. Genuinely shock and awe. It was incredible. At the reveal, it hadn't even occurred to me
yet. It did to me. I watched it before you watched it and then I rewatched it with you guys. But I figured it out closer to the end. But it took that much time to get it.
I had an inkling when there was that shot in the jail and I was like, nah, that's too big. I batted it away. It wasn't too big. It was perfect. But for this, that element of surprise, it just didn't catch me.
The surprise factor went when you thought about it more and more, and the predictability of the events that were going to happen because they'd already happened before. And when you put together the cause and effect, the future timeline, the past timeline, the whole prior situation, which seemed, what the fuck is happening, completely went away because you predictably already knew what was going to happen because it was already in the past, but you're in the future, and your future self was going to the past.
Yeah.
Right.
I will say one thing they did do well was the timey-wimey time-jumping stuff. Very quickly, that can turn into an absolute shit show.
Yeah.
This wasn't.
Yeah, they handled that well, you're right.
The kind of linear nature of it, or the non-linear nature, the maths and the physics, and the way they explained it, it did take a while.
Yeah.
And they did kind of lay it on thick towards the end, but you needed it, because if you hadn't got it by then, you'd be like, what is this turnstile?
Yeah, they spent all the time putting that exposition in, and they spent a lot, too much maybe, but they did it so that people would not be confused. So from that aspect, you could say they succeeded, but I do feel that while the effects were really cool initially, they became very boring and tired as the film went on. When you got to that final 30, 40 minutes, it wasn't really impressive visually. Felt a bit, they're just going backwards. I'm not sure how I feel about the pacing of the film because it was purposely paced the way it was. And that being an active choice makes it almost worthwhile.
The tension growing and the slow pullback. And then we had very slow moments and then it was just, oh, bam, 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 stuff's happening.
The problem was the first hour of the film felt really slow, really uninteresting, and I said it while we were watching it. The way it was shot, edited, cut, everything, it felt like a bad video game.
Yeah.
There was something not right and something super jarring with it. Maybe the ADR edition and the sound mixing being so bad had an effect on that. But I do feel that while the sound mixing was really gruffly and really rough and you couldn't really hear what was happening a third of the time throughout the whole movie, it did take you into the film a bit more.
Yeah.
There was a point to it and he wanted to make you feel more into the movie.
That really did happen when they were wearing the masks. Their voices were muffled, you could hear their heavy breathing. You could even hear footsteps in certain places with clarity because of the floor they were on. But the actual audio, it was really difficult, guys. Like, sometimes it was really nice and clear, and then sometimes they were speaking a little bit softly and you couldn't hear anything.
Even in plain scenes where nothing's happening, sometimes you couldn't even hear it. I don't know if they messed up the filming and the ADR had to be done that badly because of the way they shot it and they mucked up the shooting. But I'm telling you, I've never experienced a film with this bad sound mixing.
Well, I remember it. As we were getting into the story, I kept looking at Bayer and being like, why is he going to India to meet this person? This is inconsequential. And then an hour and a half later, it was like, oh, okay, well, I was right.
That was there so that they could lay up all that, so when you got to the end of the film, that stuff all made sense.
I know. It was clearly necessary. They've done like a really big board and gone, okay, we need all these things to be in place. We need to make sure that they're in.
Something that didn't help was the fact that the main character didn't have a name as far as I know. He was called the protagonist, a protagonist, but I can't remember him actually having a real name. He said in the car with the Indian woman, he said, I'm the protagonist. I'm the protagonist. I'm the guy who set this whole thing up.
Yeah.
So, spoilers by the way.
Spoiler.
Which was predictable once we got to that point. But again, he didn't have a name. He called himself the protagonist. Robert Pattinson though, not bad.
Rob Pattinson, I really enjoyed his performance.
Not bad. It's the first time I've ever felt Cedric Diggory in a Robert Pattinson performance since Cedric Diggory.
Yeah, the shots towards the end when they're walking away with Aaron Taylor-Johnson. Yeah, you're right. The half smirk he did, very Cedric Diggory.
It was like I was seeing him talking to Harry before he's gonna die. And it's like, well, he was talking to him before he was gonna die.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense. When people rewatch this film 2 or 3 times, there won't be those questions like Inception where there were loose ends left. This one was pretty much done. Dusted. You know Robert Pattinson is actually the kid of Elizabeth Debicki and Kenneth Branagh. Yeah. Like, that's it. There's nothing else to really say. That's a fact. That's what it was. The beginning of your journey with me, but the end of mine with you was basically the line.
It was a very Doctor Who, 10th Doctor, River Song thing, which I appreciated, because it's a
Doctor
good
Who was
one.
good back then. And from the trailers, this is not the film I was expecting it to be. I thought it would have been more Inception than James Bond-esque.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be more mind-bending, not physical reality.
It took so long to get invested into the story because there was so much prelude and build-up. It was almost like we were watching a prologue for the first 30 minutes before the film actually kind of started, and then it took another hour for it to properly get into gear. And the last hour was really good, but the first hour and a half was so difficult to get through. And as we said, the sound mixing and the inability to hear the audio didn't help with that.
The dialogue we did hear was, perfectly okay. It was kind of
bland,
honestly. Like, it wasn't doing anything more than what it needed to, which was deliver information for a lot of the time, even past the point of exposition. When we thought the exposition dump was over, there was more exposition in Aaron Taylor-Johnson. It's a pincer point, and I'm like, why hasn't this been brought up before?
They tried to explain it in those moments, the backward and the forward coming together at the same time, do a two-pronged attack from the past and the future. So I think they explained that relatively well.
I get that, but it was also a bit far in to be adding layers to this. It was obviously necessary for 12, 13 minutes later when they were like, we're doing a two-pronged attack on the base in that town. It's like, oh, okay, well, I guessed it. It should have become more enjoyable, and technically it did, but it kind of became more bland as we got through it.
It became more bland, but conducively it became a better story, and it became better put together as the story went on because there was payoff for the things that were confusing.
The first hour and 20 minutes worth of exposition, they could have cut that down by half by just changing the scenarios.
But could they, though?
No, I think it would have been better for the protagonist, because I can't remember his name, to have remembered flashbacks from him being a CIA operative and having things that didn't make sense at the time, but with the adrenaline, he kind of batted it off as, I don't understand this, it must have happened differently, I'm remembering it wrong. And that could have even been the flashback scene at the opera house.
Right.
Rather than it happening in real time, and then him getting caught, and then meeting the Beauxbatons girl, whose name I cannot remember, from Harry Potter.
But that was
Harry
just
Potter
pure
reference.
exposition, though,
But
wasn't
then,
it?
was that exposition needed? Because it was further explained.
No, because they explained the basic understanding of the cause and effect in that scene, didn't they?
Why couldn't that have been done by somebody else? Certain things they could have shuffled it around a bit better to reduce that time and make it more enjoyable to watch.
Think of it like this. He's structuring a story, Christopher Nolan, so that the protagonist, which is his name, is someone who you trust, you understand, and he's knowledgeable. And he's learning along the way. But if he'd got that information from Robert Pattinson is on a higher level of understanding and ability to him.
But he always was. He was just lying.
He was, but that wasn't known to the audience as to whether he was just not telling the truth or if he didn't know, right? But from this point, you're getting the information from an expert, and now he knows the information, as opposed to taking it from Robert Pattinson. I think structurally, story-wise, they did that so he came into the situation not asking for help, but knowing the information.
I understand that, right? But it did add to the blandness. We're using the word bland a lot.
It did bloat the film, but it was necessary for what they were trying to do. The first timey-wimey fight scene between the protagonist, Robert Pattinson's character, in the airport scene was undeniably see-through, boring.
Guys.
We watched it and said, that's them from the future.
Yeah, maybe, well, I don't think they wanted us to figure that out, but the fighting style was the same. And I was like, maybe it's him. And then we saw a strip of his skin, and I was like, no, guys, it's him. And then Robert Pattinson ripped off the mask and threw him away.
Yeah.
And then he threw it back to him. So clearly it's them from the future, because otherwise he would have destroyed him. With the Elizabeth Debicki character, they wanted the protagonist to feel for her. And they met because they needed to, because he needed access to her husband and yada yada. And you know, when she was telling him her story, I was like, you have no reason to tell this man anything. Like, anything at all. You're the wife of, like, a multi-billionaire, and you would not be passing up this information, especially when you know he's some form of spy. So, like, what are you doing, one? And two, why did he care?
Yeah.
Like, there was no
we
reason.
didn't care.
I was like,
at all.
I was like, why is this being included? And then the further along we got, we're like, oh, I guess we need her, that's why. But it felt very forced, and I didn't enjoy that aspect of it.
No.
Obviously, she was very necessary for the story, but at the beginning, it just felt like time being thrown away.
She felt like the worst written character in the whole film.
Yeah.
Like, when you look at Robert Pattinson, John Washington, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, all of them were fine. Michael Caine, Indian woman, I don't know the name of the actress. She was fine. She was a bit jarring, but she was fine. Her writing and the way it was portrayed was unlikable, honestly. Oddly unlikable. Like, clearly she's been through a little bit of shit.
Yeah.
But I didn't give a fuck. Because she'd also done some wrong as well by trying to implicate her husband by messing him up. Two wrongs don't make a right in most cases, but clearly her husband is a lot worse than her.
But the one thing I didn't get is the whole time she was like, yes, the world's gonna end, the world with my son in it, and my son, I care about my son. But then in the end, she doesn't wait for the confirmation to make sure that she could kill her husband before the world ends, and she kills him anyway, so she didn't really care about her son, she was selfish in the end.
Yeah.
And it's like, my dude, you can't make that her primary thing. The whole film, oh, my son, I care about my son, he was gonna take my son away from me, my son, and then be like, fuck my son, I don't care.
I need to kill you, and I need to destroy the world potentially because I cannot wait 10 seconds.
10 seconds.
10 seconds!
Well, she didn't know it was going to be 10 seconds, but nevertheless, I was like, no, guys, no. Like, what you tried to do with the character just got crumbled in an instant.
Dumb shit. That was dumb shit, I have to say. There wasn't much real dumb shit. That was dumb shit.
That was it. Some people are going to be like, yeah, you complain too much, but I don't think we are complaining too much. You know, when Christopher Nolan is attached to a film, you expect something, and this didn't deliver that.
I love you, Christopher Nolan, by the way. I think you make unbelievable movies and stories.
And that's why we hold you in such high regard.
Precisely. You know what? Christopher Nolan would have done a great job with an Uncharted film. I think he could have done an Uncharted film. Seeing the visual capability, I think that would have been interesting dynamic, because there's a lot of weird stuff in Uncharted. They missed a trick. I don't know why I just thought of that, but I think a lot. I think a lot of wrong stuff a lot of the time. People will say this was a great film. I'm not denying that it was a good film. I just think that it could have been more and it wasn't the film we were expecting it to be. And if they'd cut the runtime down by 20, 30 minutes, I think it would have helped.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have hindered it. I think you could have got a lot of those same points in without the extra time spent. And I don't think it added a lot adding those extra minutes. But we could be wrong. People could say it was an unbelievably good film. And they could be wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying I'm wrong. I'm just saying someone's wrong. Anyway, guys. If you did enjoy this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel down there. If you didn't, then the Batman himself gonna come after you. Robert Pattinson playing the Batman. You don't want that. Do they want that?
No.
You really don't, so just subscribe anyway to avoid that. I've been NarendraTheComic.
I've been NONSENSEI.
You were about to say India. I heard.
No.
I've been
I was just stumbling over my ends, you know.
You've been great, and we'll see you next time. That's tomorrow. If you don't know, make a video every single day. Been doing it every day for over 1,000 days now. We ain't stopping till we get to 10,000 subscribers. So do subscribe. Pop back again tomorrow for some more quality shitty content, because we're hashtag never not here. Just how it goes. Also bring the Pakwas means nonsense in Punjabi. And we also bring that. Bring a lot. Bring a little, do a lot, do a little. But we do indeed bring the quality shitty content on a daily basis. So see you tomorrow. More of the same. Slightly different. But essentially the very same. Once more. See you then. Skadoosh.